Obviously, you know, the way our year went wasn't acceptable. Certainly not what we're looking to accomplish. We want to play well beyond the regular season. That being said, you meet with every individual, go over their season, tell them the good and the bad, and what's expected of them next year.
You say it wasn't acceptable. Many it was expected. That's what happened. But in terms of what your expectations were, realistically, were they met? Were they not met? I mean, in terms of what you wanted to get if it wasn't for a playoff, beyond just getting.
Yeah, we all understood the situation we're in, but that doesn't mean that we don't think we could have had a better season.
Right.
We felt that there were a lot of games out there that we could have had a better result from. A lot of games we lost at the end of the game, under 2 minutes to go. But the one thing I told this group, and I think I've mentioned this before, was a very coachable group. I mean, these guys were, people ask me, what's your biggest surprise getting to this, coaching, being a head coach at this level, and that would probably be my number one surprise, how coachable they were, how willing they were to do what we were trying to ask them to do. And, one of the things we stressed when we got here was it was a we feeling. We wanted the players and the coaches to all be on the same page, and we all want the same thing. They want to be the best players they can be, and, we want to be the best team we can be. So we all want the same thing, but there's only one way to do it. And, for the most part, these guys were very coachable and tried to do everything that we asked them to do.
What did you learn about yourself as a coach throughout the season? What did you have to adjust as it went on your first full season?
Yeah, first full season as head coach, I mean, no matter what team you coach, you're learning something about your team every year. I mean, every team's different, no matter what level you're coaching. So, there's a learning curve for every coach, obviously more so for a new coach when you've never coached a group before. So, finding out, putting lines together, putting D pairings together, managing personalities, how to motivate people. There's a big learning curve for the first time whenever you take a job. And, obviously we'll have some guys back next year, how many, who knows, and that's just pro sports, but there'll be a lot less of that next year for us as a staff because there'll be a lot more familiarity.
How beneficial will that be, knowing that they know what you want and now you know what they can do?
Excuse me, how
beneficial to you?
I think big time. And actually that's some of the things we talked about in our meetings with every player. I think, the familiarity and the expectations and, how we want to go about our business and how we want to play, there'll be a lot more clarity right from the get-go. And there won't be that learning curve.
How much did it help, and do you think this year would have gone a different way maybe if you hadn't had that window in Colorado?
Yeah, there'd probably be more nerves involved, nerves in general. But I think once you coach at this level, and again, I was fortunate to also coach in World Championships, so I've had a lot of experience coaching NHL players. That was never an issue for me taking this job, and I don't want to say there was any arrogance, but I was never nervous. I never wondered what it was going to be like, and I think those experiences made this transition a lot easier for me.
Can you compare what you inherited in some of these young players, Heedle, Howden, Anderson, Blueshirts, go on down the list, what they were to what they are now?
Going through it, and as we went through our roster and talked about what our message was going to be at the end of the year, you really feel like all these guys are in a better place today than they were when the season started. Certainly everybody has noted Buchnevich's progress. Statistically, obviously the statistics speak for that. It's probably harder to gauge Lias and Heedle because you don't really have a baseline, but Lias Anderson is in a much better position today than he was in September. He's in much better shape. I thought his game continued to improve. I thought he was a real good penalty killer for us by the end of the year. So his game came along, and he's 20 years old, and I've said this a lot. We live in a league where, the young player is having a lot of success. Not every young player is going to have a lot of success, and people grow at different times, and I think Lias is trending in the right direction. I think Phil Heedle had a better year as the season went on. There were certainly some peaks and valleys. He's 19 years old. I was talking to Mika about him. We were in Minnesota. Mika and I had a long conversation, and we were talking about Phil. And I said to Mika, Mika, in 6 years, Phil's going to be your age. That's a lot of hockey. And I think sometimes people lose sight of how young these guys are.
Coach,
you talked when you were hired about making the players, better people. Do you feel like those relationships were forged this season for you in a meaningful way?
Yeah, I just think the more time you spend with people, the stronger the relationship gets. You're not going to have great relationships with everybody. That's life. But you're going to have a relationship with them. And one of the things we try to do as a staff is spend as much time with the player as possible. So when you have hard conversations, when you hold them accountable, they're probably more receptive to it. That's not the only conversations you're having with them. That's not the only experiences you're having with them. And I think it gives you an opportunity to send them the message that everything you're doing is to make them the best player they can be. And once they fully understand that, I think you have a lot better chance to make them the best player they can be.
When you look at Chris's second half from February on, his numbers, goals, assists, points were down pretty significantly. How much of that do you attribute to his leg injury, or was there something else that you thought was missing there?
I think the injury had, he and I talked about this today. He said to me, I should not have tried to play through it. And, he was pretty quiet about it, to be honest with you. But, listen, it was a hard 6 weeks for everybody. When you make the trades we made, when the realization of our situation probably hit home for a lot of guys, in particular the veterans, the guys that are used to playing in playoffs, I think it's human nature that, frustration creeps in and maybe a play suffers a little bit. And I don't think he was the only guy that experienced that.
You're going to have a 37-year-old goalie who won 2 games in the last 2 months of the season. Next season, and this is months away, I
Right.
understand. Do you have to monitor Henrik's workload at all in the first half?
I mean, Hank and I have talked about that for sure. And again, I've said this, I was a new coach and, Hank's done it this way and this is the way it's done. And he and I have talked about that for sure. Listen, he's still one of the top goalies in the league. And he's a part of our future.
You had the youngest team in the league at the end of the season. You're probably going to add a couple more young kids. How do you make it better? Is it just a matter of going out and adding some top level people, or can you make it better with what you have plus some more youth?
Yeah, these are discussions that, Jeff and I and Chris and our organization are going to have moving forward. Obviously, our season just ended yesterday. I think there's a lot of scenarios that can be drawn up, especially with our draft situation and our cap space. So, it could go a lot of different ways, and those decisions will certainly be made over the next few months.
Do expectations change if you are just a younger team, a younger version of this team?
Yeah, I think you can be young and still have success, depending on who you surround those young players with. And again, but a lot of that is going to play out here over the next few months.
Do you think that's the next step to making, to getting better, is maybe getting some more guys in that top 6, to step up, or either outside or inside this organization?
Yeah, I think that is part of the plan moving forward.
Go ahead. Throughout the year, you talked about your team not having a shooting mentality. When you have your organizational meetings, do you feel like you have to stress to Chris and to Jeff to kind of go out and get those players that are shooters, or do you think they already know that?
I think that's part of building a roster. I think there's a lot that goes into those decisions depending on what your roster is going to look like. And I think any team that's didn't make the playoffs, there's a lot of uncertainty on what your roster is going to look like. So, listen, no matter who's here, we want to have more of a shooting mentality. And that's something that we've addressed with all of our players in our exit interviews and our exit meetings. And again, those decisions are going to continuously be made depending on what our roster is going to look like.
Do you feel it's key to name a captain next year?
Again, that's depending upon what your roster looks like. A captain usually evolves from what your roster looks like, and a guy may have a chance to be a captain on one roster, yet if your roster takes a different look, then he may not be a captain. So I know that's been a question people have been asking, but that question will be answered depending on what a roster looks like.
We talked about defense and that you guys got to get better. Is that just by experience, like some of the guys that went through some growing pains here last year?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that go into that. I think it's a mentality. It's a want to defend. I think puck management has a lot to do with it as well. I think a lot of the chances we gave up this year were off of turnovers and poor decisions on our end, or poor decisions in the offensive zone, or poor decisions in the neutral zone. There's a lot that goes into playing defense, and puck management's also part of that. But at the end of the day, you've got to want to engage in one-on-one battles. You've got to technically be in the right position, stick position, body positioning, and a will and a desire to defend. Everybody can defend, and it's just how much does it mean to you? And that's something we absolutely have to get better at.
You've mentioned often about the constant evaluation that goes on, and that this is a very coachable group. Do you get a sense through the course of the season, and maybe in your meetings today, of what kind of self-evaluators you have, in particular the young guys? Is that a strength in some of the guys? It might differ guy to guy.
Yeah, we were just talking as a staff. I mean, our meetings, there were no surprises. The guy didn't walk out the door and you'd go, "Oh my Lord, did you believe what he just said?" There was none of that. They were pretty dead on with how we perceive their season to be and how they perceive their season to be.
Brendan was saying that he, it was a little bit difficult for him switching between defense and forward. Do you, as an organization, value having that kind of flexibility in a player where he can play multiple positions?
Yeah, anytime you have a player that can play multiple positions, it doesn't happen very often in our sport at this level. And I thought he did a really good job up front. We used him on the penalty kill on defense when he was playing forward. So, again, depending on what our roster looks like, it'll be interesting to see what happens next year, because he did himself a lot of good playing up front.
Just to follow up on that last thing, when guys walk out of the meetings and you're on the same page with these guys, sounds like. I mean, is that encouraging?
It is encouraging.
No,
it's encouraging, because I think clarity and understanding of what's expected of you makes it easier to be a good player. And I think there is clarity with these guys. I think they understand what we're looking for out of each and every one of them, and they know what their job is, and they know what's expected of them.
Do you ask for input from the players as to what they thought?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to know. I'm curious, because self-evaluation is a huge part of being a good player. You got to be honest with yourself. And if there's a big divide between how we perceive their season to be and how they perceive their season to be, now you got trouble. You're not always going to agree on everything when it comes to hockey. Hockey's a very subjective sport, but you can't have that gap be so big that player thinks A and you think C. So, it was good that it seemed like we were all on the same page of how each guy's season went and what is expected of them.
How will you examine the close games? How will you look at the overtime games and all that? How does that go into your evaluation?
It's part of it, and we know we've got to be better in overtime. It's nice to win yesterday in overtime. Didn't win many games in overtime. But I think I have to do a better job, and we have to do a better job of having more of a plan, 3-on-3. We did talk about what we wanted to do, but probably need to get a little bit more specific in what we're looking to do 3-on-3. So I certainly, as a coach, take responsibility for that, and I can promise you that it'll be better next year from a planning standpoint.
I meant more like all the close games. I'm talking about that.
Yeah, like the game, the end of the game stuff. Maybe that's youth and, inexperience might have had something to do with it. Not trying to do too much, understanding how to win. Sometimes you got to learn not to lose before you learn how to win. And I think that was part of our problem this year. We weren't learning how not to lose. And we've got to manage that balancing act of learning not to lose and learning how to win.
What's your itinerary leading into the draft? Are you scouting?
I'll be around, and I'd love to get involved as much as possible, yeah. And again, that's stuff we're going to talk about here over the next few days of, what I can do to help, and any sort of insight or opinion that I can lend that might help us.
Do you expect your whole staff to do that?
Yes, I do, yes.
Was it a fun year for you, despite the record not being what you wanted and the results not being quite what you wanted? Was it fun?
Listen, if you can't enjoy being head coach of the New York Rangers, you should go pick another profession. I loved every minute of it.
Did it help you having Brown upstairs?
Excuse me?
Did you like having Brown upstairs?
I liked having Brownie upstairs. He gave us good insight. And, 4 coaches on the bench can be a little much, so it's always good to... I liked him there in the third period because he can help, too, on the ice with managing some things. So I liked the way it was structured.
And
Yeah, not a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, it was
It's
certainly,
mostly assistants.
yeah, something we would look at, face-off stuff and
Yeah.
statistical data that they may have, who's winning face-offs on one side, who's winning them against which guy, stuff like that. That's more what we used it for. We'll have a lot more familiarity with it over the summer.
Did you see a difference in first half Brady Shea and second half Brady Shea?
Yes, big difference.
How so?
Well, I just think he played a much freer game. I thought that early on he really carried the burden of his contract with him. I thought he was trying to do too much. And he certainly acknowledged that, through in our discussions through the year and at the end of the year. And I thought he was in a much better place mentally. During the second half, just played much better hockey. Wasn't trying to do too much. Let the game come to him, and was a player, or at least was going in the direction of the player we all know he's capable of being. And one of the things we talked about, I think there's a whole new level for him to get to, and excited about him next year.
Along that line, how do you see the sort of the timeline of the development of a defenseman versus anybody else?
It might be a little longer too, but you take on different responsibilities in your career. Brady's now, like I said, that contract. I mean, he wants to please so bad. He doesn't want to let people down. So I thought that was part of his issue early on. But he's getting in that wheelhouse of where he should reach his prime now, and he's built a pretty good foundation for himself. But we all think there's another level for him to get to.
Do you think that because he played so well with Adam, that he may benefit from playing with a defensive guy? It might free him up a little bit more than playing with Shattenkirk, for example.
Yes, I do, but I also think he and Shaddy played pretty well together. But I understand that question. A guy with his ability to have someone like Adam McQuaid, who's rock solid defensively, no no nonsense to his game. You pretty much know where Adam's going to be, shift in and shift out. That probably helped him.
Do you have we don't know what the roster's going to look like.
Right.
I get that, but is Filipino the center or with, better?
Yeah, I think obviously center is his natural position, but with all young players, when they get to this level, there is some position changing. Sometimes you got to play the wing, and again, depending on what our roster is going to look like, I think eventually he's going to be a center.
Yeah.
It may not be next year. It all depends on what our roster is going to look like.
Is it intriguing to have Lemieux from the beginning next year and Strong from the beginning?
Yeah, that was something we talked about with both those guys. I mean, obviously, Stromer's been here a long time, but it's going to be good to have him here from the get-go next year and build on what he did this year. And, with Lemieux, being here from the get-go and, probably having an opportunity to be in a different role than he was in Winnipeg, I think will put him in a different mindset coming into training camp.
What was the same about how you envisioned this job, and what was surprising or different than you anticipated?
I've talked about the practice time. Obviously, I knew that you didn't have a lot of practice time. It was a little bit different than, probably less than I thought it was going to be. People talked about managing the media. Guys have been great. It's been the challenge that everyone said it was, but it's still the honeymoon. Get the body vest out next year and see how that goes. It's just been, it's been, like I said, I've loved every minute of it. And again, I've had a lot of different jobs. Each job brings on a new challenge. There's some surprises with every job you take. And this was no different. There were some surprises, but for the most part, it pretty much was what I thought it was going to be.
With the World Championships, what's your feeling on if guys should play, how many should play, should just the young guys play? What do you feel about the guys who've just gone through 82 games for you, suiting up and going to play at the World Championships?
Well, I think it's an incredible opportunity to continue to grow as a player, and no matter how old you are. And they get a good, teams that don't make the playoffs, it's 3.5 weeks before you actually leave. So there is enough downtime for a guy to kind of rest a little bit and still prepare for the World Championships. But as I told our guys, you're hockey players. Why wouldn't you go play hockey? You're going to get plenty of time off. And it's an opportunity to represent your country. It's an opportunity to win. And those things are valuable. You can take some of those experiences and apply them the next year. And I want all our guys to go as much as possible, unless there's physical issues, and go have success. Go feel winning.
Speaking of physical issues, aside from Faust, anybody need anyone more?
Not that I know of, no. You know, the way things were structured today, they went right from the medical to us, so I haven't really had a chance to dig too deep in that, but I think I probably would have heard something up to this point, but nothing.
Okay.
You talked from day one, I'm sorry, about wanting to carve an identity with this team. What strides do you felt you've taken over the year doing that, and what strides do you carry into this season in that regard?
Yeah, I thought we did make strides in how we wanted to play. There's certainly another level for us to get to, I feel. I think our guys understand, you know, the way we want to play. Again, we don't want to be the Broad Street bullies, but we certainly want to have a snarl to our game. We want to have a physical edge to our game. I just think that's essential if you're going to have success, not only during the regular season, but in the playoffs for sure. I mean, you all watch playoff hockey, and you better put your big boy pants on because it's big boy hockey. And, you know, again, not everybody has that in their DNA, but, you know, you've got to bring as much out of it as you can in each player. And, you know, I thought some of our guys did a really good job in that area.
You're excited about what you got from Alex this year?
Yes, very, very. But like I said, I'm not surprised he played the way he did.